Hello and welcome to Speak Up, Listen Up, Follow Up, the podcast from the National Guardian's Office. In this series, we're exploring the role leaders play in fostering a healthy speaking up culture and making speaking up business as usual. In this episode, Dr. Jayne Chidgey-Clark, National Guardian for the NHS, speaks to Jenni Douglas Todd, the Chair of Dorset's Integrated Care Board. In this conversation, Jenni gives practical advice on how to listen to hard-to-reach voices and how important it is to speak to not just those that you relate to, but everyone.
All of us have a responsibility to be speaking with truth, with care, with dignity to each other.
We hope you enjoyed the episode, and now over to Jayne.
Oh, Jenni, welcome to our National Guardian Office podcast. It's an absolute this space to talk about a subject that I know is really dear to your heart. I know you've been an advocate of good speaking up culture in your roles within your integrated care system and in your role as Director of Equalities and Inclusion. That's why we wanted to have you here to have this conversation with me. So can I, as a starter, would you just tell me what freedom to have you here to have this conversation with me? So can I, as a starter, would you just tell me what freedom to speak up means to you?
Yes, well, it's first of all, it's lovely to be here, Jayne. And as you said, this is something that I'm really passionate and committed to support. So what it means to me, actually, an environment for people to raise any concerns that they have and to be able to do so in a way where they feel protected, that the organisation, particularly if it's a serious issue, the organisation is not going to come down heavy on them, or they might lose their job, or be ostracised by others. So it's about having that right environment where people feel enabled and encouraged to talk about things that are not happening right within an organisation.
Yeah, and that's so key, isn't it, Jenni? And I think I'd add to that, echoing everything that you've said, and as well that a speak up culture where leaders want people, their workers, to raise areas of concern, where they want to know what's getting in the way of them doing a good job and positively seek out routes where people can do that. I think that's so important, isn't it? Can I ask you, have you ever had to speak up, or experience of that as a worker yourself?
Yes, I have had people speak up to me. I haven't myself been in an environment to speak up in health. That's probably partly because I'm relatively new to the health environment, and my first start in the NHS was a non-executive director, so it's probably it's probably doesn't afford the same opportunities to speak up.
Yeah.
I am also the National Director for Equality and Inclusion with NHS England. So I am in an executive type role, so I guess there's opportunities there. But in my previous experience working with another public sector organisation, I did actually speak up. I initially raised my concern for management behaviours with my line manager that was exhibiting the behaviours. And when nothing changed, I actually went to the chair and spoke to the chair, and then we went through a process to resolve that. And I was quite lucky; it was resolved, and the chair took my concern seriously and acted on that. And where people have spoken up to me, I've done something similar. I've either raised it with, particularly in health, I've raised it with the relevant director.
Yeah.
So that the director themselves could be aware of some of the culture and experience in that directorate, and then similarly also notified the chair that I had done so.
Yeah, and that's just so important, isn't it? What you've described to me is a system where if you've been spoken up to, you've done something about it, and that's the thing we talk. Been spoken up to, you've done something about it, and that's the thing we talk about in the National Guardian's Office with our Freedom to Speak Up Guardians. But it's not just guardians people speak up to. That's just one route. People also speak up, as you said in your example, to line managers or to more senior people within the organisation, patient safety, or acting on what you've heard. So obviously you thank the person for what they're telling you and that information. And we talk in the National Guardian's Office about the gift of information, that if someone comes to you, you know, in your organisation, they're giving you a gift of something that you can change, make it safer, make it better, for people who use your services and also for your workers. So that's so important, for people who use your services and also for your workers. So that's so important. And it's lovely to hear that you had a positive experience where it was resolved. I think sadly what we do here too many times is that not all workers have that positive response, but that's for a later conversation. I wonder if I can look to the future a bit and talk as a chair for an integrated care system down in Dorset, and ask you, how do you see speaking up sitting within that integrated care system? What's the integrated care board? What will your role as the chair be in terms of setting the tone and culture? What were your expectations? Have you started having conversations about it?
Yes, so we haven't had conversations per se about freedom to speak up, but we are having conversations about the culture and the behaviours that we want to exhibit as a board, and for us to then think about how we do that and what is the tone that we set for our organisation. So we're going to, as you know, we start on the 1st of July, but ahead of the 1st of July, we're doing two things to try and bring about that culture. So the first thing was that we had enabled us to talk around some of the things around the culture, around communications and engagement with our workforce, but also with our communities at large, and a really important part of the integrated care system for me is that we are actually utilising our roles as a board collectively, so both the non-executive directors and the executive directors, to hear from communities that we would not normally hear from. And that's really important in somewhere like, because we do have you know, a lot of wealthy individuals who've been used to navigating systems, know what to do, are not shy in coming forward, so they'll be happy to engage and contribute on consultation and engagement events. But we do have others, particularly with hidden poverty, where they are not as good at accessing services and therefore similarly don't naturally engage. And the key bit for us as a system is to get to those voices. And so the challenge that I have set for all of the board when I was recruiting them, but reiterated again on Friday, is that that's what we're there to do. We are there to, it sounds easy to do, to listen to the hard to hear voices, but that's what we're there to do. And so we've got to find a way to do that. And the other thing that we discussed on Friday was that we want to make for our workforce and for the communities. And so part of moving forward is that we are going to be having patient and workforce voices at our board meetings. Our first board meeting is going to be on the 1st of July. And we will start the process from there. So that's the first thing that we're doing. The second thing, element that we put in place to really bring the culture and behaviours to the forefront of our thinking is that we are having a development day as a board, at the beginning of June. And that's really for us to think about what does it mean to be a high performing board? What are the behaviours that we need to exhibit? How do we make sure that we are actually listening and encouraging ourselves as leaders to create the environment and encourage people to speak up, and enable the executive to do that and to live that practice? So that's the second element that we're doing.
Wow, Jenny, that is so important to hear, and I really appreciate you for explaining that. I really hope that all leaders of the new integrated care systems and integrated care boards will be, and I guess we know that very soon NHS England will be publishing their new revised Freedom to Speak Up policy, the universal policy, which will apply across all settings, and also the guidance and the sort of the implementation improvement support that will sit underneath that. And I'm very much hoping that all organisations, providing care, will take the time as a board to look at that, to do the training, to do the freedom to speak up training for leadership, and to use that as an opportunity to, as you've said, to set that tone and that culture and lead by example. So it'll be really interesting to see how your board develops. You mentioned the importance of hearing hard to reach voices, and that has just chimed with me, and obviously that's partly the population of Dorset, so the people using your services, but also you've talked about workers, and we know from a load of evidence that there are pockets and there are groups of workers that are less heard than others. There are particular groups with particular protected characteristics, and there are students, night workers, there are all sorts of people who might find it harder to speak up, and I wondered, particularly with your role as the Director of Equalities and Inclusion, if you'd like to give us some of your insights into how you can help people from a Black and ethnic minority background and those other harder to reach groups, how you can ensure that they really do feel their voice is valued, heard and acted on, and anything that you've done in your current organisations to do that would be really helpful for our listeners.
The key things, Jane, for me is around communication. And that is the ability to have an interest in people as individuals and as collectives, and actually go out and walk and speak with people. So it's really important and very interesting. Some of the executive and the non-executives last week when we met up, that I want them to go out, not just as part of their induction. I don't want them to just go and meet with their teams and senior stakeholders, but I actually want them to, go into our organisation, talk to the front door staff there, the people that clean our offices, because actually what I find, having done that myself, is that they have a mine of information. And normally it's that thing that you said about data and information. I always think that there is so much that we can glean just from speaking to people, particularly people that we wouldn't ordinarily speak to in our ordinary interactions, because they may not be people that come to board meetings. It's more valuable than appointing consultants, because you find out so much from those individuals. And I was speaking to somebody last week who said that they had actually done that. They'd gone out and spoken to somebody, only to find out that individual had been working around our system for 40 years and actually had some of the answers for things, because the individual was saying, I've heard these conversations going on over the 40 years. People don't normally see me.
Yeah.
So they don't, but I've heard the information change. And so for me, the thing is about encouraging people to talk. And I know not everybody is an extrovert, so they won't find it easy, but actually that's the responsibility that we have as leaders. And so one of the things I've done in my profession, in my career as national director, is that I set up last year the series called Race Ahead, and that was about having conversations on race and how to help the NHS become an anti-racist organisation. And the whole point of that was to say that all of us have a responsibility to be speaking with truth, with care, with dignity to each other, so that I don't just relate to people that look like me and sound like me and have my experiences, but actually I step out of my comfort zone and I speak to everybody to understand what the world looks like from their perspective, how they engage in the workplace, whether or not they feel that they can bring their whole selves to work, and that collectively we're building our understanding and our capacity and compassion for wanting to do things together. It is about us going out and speaking to everyone that works for the NHS, regardless of what their role is.
Absolutely, Jenny, that is so key, isn't it? And having been a non-executive director myself for a number of years in an NHS organisation, you're absolutely right. It is not waiting for people to come to you, be you a senior leader or be you a Freedom to Speak Up guardian or be you a manager. It's actually all of us within leadership roles actually going out and asking people, how is it round here? What's it really like round here? And recognising, and I love what you just said in terms of not just speaking to people who look or sound in the lived experience to ourselves, but taking ourselves to meet everybody wherever they are, and acknowledge that I don't know. So for me, as a white woman, I actually do find now more empowered to speak to people and say, from a different ethnic background, what is it like for you? Do you feel you could speak to me or to someone that looks like me? Is there anything that gets in the way for you? And I think it's about organisations looking at their networks of people, because not everyone's come from a one-to-one. So are you using your networks for people, with disability? Are you using your networks for people from Black minority ethnics to say, actually, should we be doing more? Can we be doing more? What would make everyone feel able to speak up about what's getting in the way of doing a good job, or if they've got concerns or matters? And I think it's being mindful, isn't it? Because we can't necessarily, I can't shake around.
Well, none of us can.
No, but I can put myself in someone's shoes with that empathy and hear from them what makes a difference. Does it feel safe? Doesn't it feel safe? And look at the ways we can ask people. And sometimes it's the direct conversation, but it's also how we use surveys. It's also how we use, focus groups and being sort of mindful that this inclusivity, because it's not a quick fix, is it? Because for so long we haven't done it right.
That's right. And if I can just come back in really quickly on that element about putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes, we had quite a long discussion about that last week in our shadow board meeting, and one of my new non-executive directors was saying, look, I'm not comfortable with that language, because there will be some individuals where I would find it really difficult to step into their shoes, because I just have not got that experience. So I need to do is to be learning from them, and I need to get myself comfortable so that I can do that engagement. So and I guess that's what I'm saying about us as the board. What we're trying to do, or what we've started to do, is to really grapple with some of these issues and try and understand, because it's a really eclectic board, and we come from very different experiences and backgrounds, and bringing that together, I'm sure will be a challenge. But at this moment in time, it feels really exciting, and it feels like that we're really starting a journey around change.
Absolutely, isn't it? If we see it as a journey, and we see it as it isn't, we've got to work in this space to enable people to feel comfortable and feel like they really are valued, their voice, and that we're going to act on what we hear, and they're not going to suffer detriment from it. I wonder if I can just finish by asking you if you have a speak up pledge, or if you have an action that you're going to take forward from our conversation today, or just in thinking about the importance of speaking up culture in the NHS.
Yeah, I think, Jayne, my pledge is to make sure that CUP is on the lips of every single one of my board members in everything that they do, so that they are constantly asking the questions around what does it feel like for you to be here? What needs to be done differently to make things feel better if they don't feel as good? And what action can actually help you to thrive in an organisation that is there and focused on people. So that's the one thing that I want to try and commit myself to, so that I'm keeping it constantly on the agenda. And I've got a brilliant chief executive who I know thinks similarly, has the same values, and is really good at speaking to people. I'm speaking to her later today, and I'm going to express that pledge to her so that we can do that collectively.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Absolute privilege to be discussing these really important issues with you today, and I look forward to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for taking the time to come on our podcast. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Next time, Jayne will be joined by the Chief Executive and the Deputy Chief Executive of NHS Providers, Chris Hobson and Saffron Caudry.
Initiatives and focus like this so that we can get to the heart of what's really going on, particularly on the front line.
Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. We welcome your feedback, so please like, rate and comment. Thanks again for listening.